Good to go.
Okay, here we are in fly tying again, and we're looking at a generic hackle stacker, or what they call a hackle back, or even a para loop. All those terms apply. And the only thing I'm using this time that I don't normally use is a parachute wing tool. And I'm going to move my phone so you can see what it is that I'm doing with my vise. Okay, there's my vise, and here is the wing tool. Paraloop wing tool is just a piece of steel that comes down and holds my parachute loop up in the air and tight so that I can wrap around it. So I'll show you that. I just made that tonight out of a piece of just wire. All right, we're using, the hackle I'm using tonight is just Grizzly hackle. I'm using ultra thread 70 denier. Scissors, of course. I'm using various colors of life cycle dubbing. So you can use any kind of dubbing you want for the body.
$8,000. Over $8,000.
And I'm using a TMC.
Because 8,000.
Actually, it's an Umpqua TMC 5262 hook, a size 14, so we can see it better. And that's it. I'm using 2 different colors of the life cycle dubbing. So we're going to begin by wrapping the hook. Start just behind the eye. No need to do consecutive loops. We want to go back to the tail. Oh, I am using one more thing. I'm using pheasant tail fibers.
A good price if you're on a tight budget.
So now we're going to put in the tailing. We're going to choose about 6 or 7 pheasant tail fibers out of this.
And can never go up for any reason. Plus a 30-day money.
Let me readjust my light here so you can see better.
And you'll
Is that better?
Free beneficiary planner. And
so we want the tail about the length of the body. So we're going to tie it on about right in here.
For your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-646-8080. 1-800-646-8080. There's no risk or obligation. That's 1-800.
Trim off the unused portion.
So call
now I'm also going to use, just for the dubbing loop, I'm going to use Ultra Thread 140. Doesn't make any difference what color you use, you're not going to see it. And I'm going to cut off about 6 or 7 inches of thread. I'm going to match up the ends of it so that I have a loop. And I'm going to put this loop of thread, I'm going to tie it to the top of this hook about that far.
Free hearing aids, free eyeglasses, free meal delivery, and free rides to medical appointments. You may also be eligible for $0 monthly premiums, $0 deductibles, or no copay.
You take it to the end, and then I'm going to double it back so that it's not going to come out under tension. And about right there for the tie down.
Are absolutely free. Just call 800-892-4510. 800-892.
I'm going to cut off the excess ends without cutting my loop, of course. We don't want that to happen. Now that I've gone that far, I can go back to the tail. And I'm going to dub a quick loop.
Mesothelioma really is all we do.
And I'm going to use light olive for the rear. And we want this to be a somewhat generous dubbing. Again, you can use wax. I just use good old-fashioned American spit.
Real quick, Jim.
Yes.
We have a TV audio in the background, and I wasn't sure if it was yours or John's that we don't have muted. I can't mute John, so I wasn't sure if it was him or not.
Okay, no, it was me. I forgot it was on. I'm so used to working. I'm so used to working with the noise.
All right.
Game on.
Okay. Now we're going to put on that rear loop right up to the thread where we have the thread tied in. Now we're going to tie in our hackle. Now sometimes you get a hackle feather like this, and you can see right between my fingers it looks a little bit beat up. And you're going to find that the fibers in here are short, weird looking. So I'm going to go up where the fibers start looking good, and I'm going to strip this back. So I've got a good, nice chunk of hackle up in here. Then I'm going to tie that on, and as always, I'm going to leave a little bit of bare stem ahead of where I'm going to tie in. And that allows the feather to align itself properly when you begin to wrap it. All right, we've got that far. Now we're going to go back and get the thorax color. And I've been using a little bit of brown olive for the thorax. You want the thorax a little bit bigger than the abdomen. So we want it generous. And again, we make a noodle. Begin to wrap. Pull that down, keep winding it. And when we get near the end, take a couple turns just behind the eye. And just to be safe, we're going to put in a couple of half hitches in here. Lock that thread into place. Now I'm going to open up my loop, and I'm going to bring my Parawing tool down, run it in the loop, and you can see where that keeps that thread nice and tight in here. And of course, this isn't perfect. Again, I just made this thing tonight, so it doesn't sit directly over the hook, but close enough. Now we're going to take the hackle, and we're going to wrap it around the thread. You want to keep tight loops. As we go around the thread. So just like doing a post. You can make it as thick or as thin as you want. The thicker really, I think, is the better. It tends to make a little bit better looking hackle. Okay. Now we're going to take our thread and we're going to go over the very end of the loop and the feather and the eye. Pull that back a little bit and get a good wrap around that eye. And then we can cut our post loose. There we go. A couple more wraps around the feather and the loop. And then we can trim those. Pick these up, trim those off, or we can just simply fold them back. Make sure we have some shank in there behind the eye. Pull that hackle back and wrap behind that eye, making a little bit of a head. Pull our hackle up. And then we can whip finish. Trim out our thread. Now, the stuff on the bottom is undesirable, so we're going to trim that out. And we have the hackle, and we can pull the hackle up. Kind of primp our fly a little bit. And there we are. There's our hackle stacker, or what they call a hackle back. So that fly is finished. Again, this is one I did earlier, almost identical, slightly different colors on the thorax. Did this one with a different tail, but you can see it's still in there. And you can just keep primping this stuff up a little bit too. This one is one I did with the exception of grizzly hackle. I did this one with peacock herl. And a little bit of polyester for the tail. So your variations are endless. You can do just about anything you want with this basic fly. And that's it. Any questions?
So Jim, you highly recommend then to play around with different materials then as far as what you're tying into there? Because obviously if you're switching between the natural feather to the synthetic for the tail, that's a huge difference, isn't it, as far as how it swims?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it will make a difference. You can put the tail high. You can only use 3 fibers. You can stick it straight out the back. You can use different colors for the abdomen and thorax, depending on what you're doing. Obviously, something pale like this one would better imitate a pale morning dun. This would be more like a blue olive.
Okay.
Okay.
I like it.
So you can make it all black. You can use black hackle. You can use grizzly hackle. You can use white hackle. You can use about anything you want. The fiber I used for the tail of the other one was just a little piece of acrylic.
Okay.
So you can play around quite a bit with this. This is number 14. This could go all the way down with shorter hackle, of course. It could go all the way down to 18 or even 20. For the hackle, if you're going to use grizzly or some kind of feather hackle, you want something that's firm and stiff. You don't want something that's floppy. If you get something that's floppy, then you just end up with a blob on top.
Okay.
But instead of the hackle going straight up like normal with a post around it, we tie the hackle and then we lay it down and tie it in.
Okay.
Pretty simple fly with the exception of wrapping the feather around the thread.
And if anybody wants to research it, there's also a technique for doing that hackle stacker that doesn't use the wire that Jim has coming over the top to hold his hackle loop up. There's actually a technique for doing it by holding it up with the index finger of your right hand, if you're right-handed, and then it's a little bit like rubbing your head and patting your stomach or whatever. But once you kind of learn the technique, it's actually not that bad. So if you don't have one of those fancy posting machines like Jim made, there is a technique for doing it without those.
Yeah. I just use 0.041 inch stainless steel wire. The same wire, in fact, that I use to make shafts for my various larger streamers. So it's kind of malleable, plenty springy, And it's just simply a wire bent that I attach to my vise and then put a hook on the end of it. And that's all there is to it.
Looks like a paper clip could do it.
Could. Yeah, it could. I could have tied something to my lamp for all that goes, and just something to hold the string up in the air. You can use your finger, you can use a wire, you can use some other string with a clip on it. You can use all kinds of different things. In fact, I think I went out and looked for it on online, and I came up with like 6 or 7 different versions. Everybody's got their own out there.
Oh yeah.
So be creative.
Or you can spend 70, 80 bucks and buy one.
Yeah, you could do that.
All right, I'm gonna stop the recording now.
All right.